this is for the first time that we are having a program where a Konkani writer and an English writer are together on one stage. I think literature is a medium of communication, and it's very apt that we should not have any kind of a discrimination. Goa is very proud of these two authors because they got the Sahitya Academy Award of this year. Yeah. Damodar Mauzo agreed to be the chief guest of this show, not just the chief guest, but he is going to actually host this show, and he will anchor the show also, and also speak about the two authors. So I welcome Sampada and I welcome Vinita. Vinita recently signed for a Yashraj film, and she told me she got so much money for it. She's actually wearing the money necklace. Yeah. So
let me be frank with you. See, I write in Konkani, and I have been translated into English. So while conversing with these two, I hope I am at ease in both the languages. I don't know how much at ease you will be when I speak to her in Konkani and in my Indian English with Vinita. Angamची जी संपदा आसा ते ताका जो पुरस्कार मेळ्ळा तो युवा साहित्य म्हणून मेळ्ळा. And here is Vinita, who has won I can say Bal Sahitya Award, children's literature. So at the outset, let me congratulate both of them. It's quite prestigious award, Sahitya Academy. Coming from a National Academy of Letters, both of them have to be proud of this award. I'm not going to give a talk to you, but I would like to make them talk. I'll start with Sampada first. Yeah. Sampada, तू कितले वर्ष जाली बरयता? Can you?
Hello. Yeah, hello everyone. I want to thank Dr. Subodh Kerkar first for inviting me here and for this function. I'm really grateful, and I'm really happy that this is happening in a museum, because museum is a kind of a place that's really adds to your lot of I could say intellectual learning, and as you enter you see the boat, that's the history. So I'm really glad that this first function after the award was announced is happening here.
So how long you have been writing now?
It's almost 12 years now. I wrote my first article in June 2009. So it's going to be almost 12 years.
Yeah. So ek tap jale. So
Ek tap
12 years is quite a long time. Anyway, let me tell you my opinion about these awards. There are many awards instituted by many organizations all over the country. Leave aside the rest of the world. In India itself, or Sahitya Academy itself has a number of awards meant for different genres or different, including the classics and all. But there are two significant awards which I consider as significant for different reasons. One is Yuva Puraskar, that is award for the youth. And the other one is not here. The other one is Lifetime Achievement Award, which goes to people like me. So here, why Yuva Puraskar is significant? It's because it's like, you are opening a curtain for awards, receiving awards. This may be your first time to get an award from a National Academy. So there will be more awards waiting for you, provided you keep writing and keep writing well. So this is very important. So this significance is that this is a stepping stone for you, and you look forward for many more awards, but then don't write for awards. You keep writing and awards will come your way. And then the Lifetime Achievement Award it is like a notice to people. Now, better you pack up. You have had your time. Now, take this award and be at home. So So I'm still writing. So no lifetime achievement award has come to me, and I wouldn't accept it so early also. But then I'm very happy for this award because Sahitya Akademi, the process of elimination is also very important. Finally, the book that comes before the jury, last jury, which is of which is of 3, and they are all connoisseurs of literature. So when you get, when your book is selected, it's really an honor to the book and to the author. I know Vinita for last 6 years we have not met. I don't know how long before we have met before, but then I'm very fond of her. You know the meaning of Vinita? I just Googled and found it. It's love and beauty. So but yeah. And I tell you, because of your writings, you did not know it. Oh, I'm very happy that I'm going to disclose it to you. So now, I'm not going by your outward looks, but then you are really beautiful. And I know you have so much love for the people, for yourself, and for your writings. So with this, probably I'll ask Sampada now. Sampada, you please talk your mind. Speak out your mind. Let people also know what makes you take to pen. You are not into BA Kala ka and
मैं diploma कला engineering.
So she's an engineer, but then she has chosen to be a writer. Of course, I don't know whether she will continue in engineering or not, because we have I know a lot of people, particularly I have a lot of friends, like Duzel Lorenzo, who is a civil engineer, but he likes writing. He has not given up, but he prefers to write. Same way, Pantaleon Fernandez, he is also...
Everyone has one good story in them.
Yeah,
At least.
and why go far away? We have Subodhi here. You know his profession, but he's studied. He would have been probably a medical practitioner, a renowned practitioner by now. But then he's into his own...
The father now artist.
Yeah. So anyway, so Sampada, you please speak out your mind. Are you happy with this award? And what do you think of the award?
Very happy with the award, especially because I won it for Konkani. Our ancestors, I mean, people like legends like Bhai Mauzo and Ravin Kerekar, everyone has struggled a lot to make Goa the official language of Goa. And because of the official language, we got a statehood. So getting this award for Konkani was a really, really satisfying moment. And I really give this credit to my parents who have allowed me to write and do research. I normally don't write travelogues. I write motivation and philosophy, and it takes a lot of research and a lot of time to write on such topic. And since fortunately my parents are financially very stable, they didn't force me to do a job. And I've been doing research and writing from last 10 years, and I think writing liberates me. And I think it's a very responsible job. I was just telling Bhai that I want to speak something about being socially responsible as a writer, and we always think that pen is mightier than the sword in a positive way as well as a negative way. We all know that even for our freedom struggle, people like Lokmanya Tilak and Gandhiji, they have used writing to kind of do awareness about freedom and all, but we don't know one person. His name is Mr. Madison Grant, and he is called America's biggest racist. And he wrote a book in 1819, The Passing of the Great Race, or the Racial Bias of European History. And this book says every non-Aryan person has to be finished, exterminated from this world. And a young Adolf Hitler was so impressed by this book, and this book was his Bible. So I think this man changed the history for bad. I mean, he inspired someone like Adolf Hitler, who also wrote a fan letter to him. And whatever the cruelty Hitler had, to kill people he doesn't like, the Jews, is because of that book. So I feel a writer, before just writing anything, we need to really think about it for a long time. And as Indian philosophy always says, a lot of things about like death, life, they also speak about writing. And there is this concept In Badrinath in Himalayas, we have a cave. And that cave is called Vyasa Guha. Vyas is the person who wrote Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita. So the myth behind this saying is that why do Vyas had to go 10,000 feet above to write Mahabharata, whether he was part of Mahabharata, he was an active member, he saw everything. But the reason he, especially for the writers, that he went to Himalayas in that cold, in that old age, at 10,000 feet to detach himself from the entire story so that he can see everything that's happening at a very higher level. The writer has to be that way. Everything that we experience, the good or bad or inferiority complex, superiority complex, everything has to have some thought churning inside. And the poison that comes has to be, kind of digested by the writer. And I think we should give the best to the readers because you never know who gets inspired from your writing and how it will impact the world. And I think this is one of the very most impactful profession in the world. And I think as writers, we need to be responsible. And this award has made me more responsible as a writer.
Most of the writers begin their writing career with writing poetry. Have you?
No, not really. As my mom is here, she is also a well-known. She has, I think, written almost all the genres, poetry and stories, short stories, novels. But my writing is more of thought-oriented. I think I was reading a lot of books and I was discussing with her. So she said, why don't you just pen down an article? And I think because of that, I just came to know that I like writing. So poetry is, I have a huge regard for poets who write poetry because it's the most difficult genre. I think drama and poetry is the most difficult genre of literature. And people simply say you have to fall in love and everyone becomes a poet. No, you have to be a poet. You don't have to, everyone falls in love, but everyone doesn't become a poet. It's a God-given gift. So no, I haven't tried a poetry. I don't think so I can write a poetry on any other genre except the travelogues and philosophy and the articles that I write.
I know I have been reading her, particularly in different periodicals, and I find she is greatly influenced by the great Ravindranath Kedekar, because I can see in your writings. And anyway, once again, congratulations to you. And now let's turn to Vinita. I know I made you, impatient to hear you, because I am also very eager to listen to her after such a long time gap. Vinita, you have been receiving many awards. I know you have been nominated for many awards. You have been getting so many awards, including the Hindu. But then when this was announced by the National Academy of Letters, the Sahitya Akademi Bal Sahitya Puraskar, what was your first reaction, and how do you react to?
So, bhai, I didn't even know that I was nominated. I didn't even know there was a Bal Sahitya Puruskar. And when I got to know that I'd won, I was having a very Goa moment. The power had gone off. There was pitch dark. We had a new puppy that we were tripping over. And the phone rang. I was trying to find it. It was chaos. And somebody told me, you won the Sahitya. I was like, I can't. I honestly thought I couldn't. They said, no, you have. So then, of course, we waited for the lights to come on, went online, searched. And I was like, okay, I won the Sahitya. And the difference between this award and the other ones are, for some reason, everybody's heard of the Sahitya Academy Awards, and it's got a huge response. I've had people from across the world congratulating me. I've had my college suddenly discover that I'm an alumni. I've had congratulatory messages from old professors who take all the credit. It's been a blast. So it's been lovely. It's got a huge response, which the other awards just simply didn't get. So yeah, it's been fab. I'd actually like to say something about, Sampath talked about moral responsibility of a writer. And, children's writing is very poorly regarded. Everyone thinks they can do it. Everyone thinks that, okay, I'm going to write a book, I'll write for kids. That should be easy. But a kid's audience is simply the toughest audience you can possibly have, as any parent who's tried to occupy a child for more than 5 minutes will know. So, and also if you're a woman, if you're brown, and if you're writing for children, you're really at the bottom of the literary caste hierarchy, totally and utterly. And it always bothers me because I just think that what does a children's writer do? What do they do? What they do actually is shape your child's imagination. They teach your child what to admire. They teach your child what a hero is. They teach your child, they move your child's heart and your child's mind. I don't think there's anything more important than that. A kid will come through school and not remember geography, geometry, but they'll remember the stories they were told. So when you talk about being morally responsible, I feel that twice as much because I really have to be so careful because I'm writing for children. And therefore, you have to look at prejudices, you have to look at what you're saying about color, caste, creed, sexuality, gender. So I personally find it very offensive when people write off children's writers and think it's a very easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do. It's a delightful thing to do, of course, when you write for kids because you get to let your inner kid loose. But the responsibility of it is tremendous. So once in a while, when an award comes along, you feel really happy about it.
See, when a writer finishes his piece of writing, I think he realizes it is a rediscovery. It is self-discovery. When you write anything, whether a novel or a short story or a poem, it's a self-discovery. So when you write about children, do you think you self-discover or you recollect your childhood, and do you discover your childhood when you finish?
I wouldn't say that actually. When you sit down to write for kids, you're actually writing as a professional writer. And one of the worst things that you can do is try and write out of your childhood or out of what you liked as your child. You know, when I was a kid, I loved Enid Blyton. It's only when I got older and I read her through different eyes, I see just how gender biased that is, just how, I hate the sentimentality. I hate the morality. I've done a 360-degree turn where I now tell everybody, do not give your kids Enid Blyton books to read. So, no. I think you sit down to write for children as you would anybody else, any other writer, as a very professional thing. That you do discover yourself while you write is very true. Sometimes you write across several books and then you realize that, oh, I have a theme going on here. So, for example, I've got several books here. All of Me starts with a boy who's alone in the dark, and he's been alone in the dark so long, he's got all these multiple personalities that he's developed, that he's talking to. And then I have Boy Number 32, and then Boy Number 32 starts with a boy who's alone in the dark because a bomb has gone off and this building is collapsed on him. And, I suddenly realized that across about 5 books, I had a theme of someone alone in the dark, and the thing that led them out of the darkness was stories. So I was like, very Freudian, isn't that? So yes, you do have a lot of self-discovery as you write, and I think that's true whether you're writing for, I do write for adults as well, whether you're writing for adults or whether you're writing for children.
What about the language that you choose to write when you write children's literature? Because you have been foraying in different genres. You have been writing different, I don't know whether you have written short stories too?
Oh yes,
Yeah,
I have a book of I have a book of short stories out called Wash Off the Dead, which is a collection
sorry
of
for my ignorance.
feminist ghost stories. And I have another one out this year called Dark Tales, which is, it's urban mythology, again, ghost stories. Language is a problem, actually, because my mom's a Hindi teacher, and all the stories she told us were mostly in Hindi. So in my mind, there's a split that goes on. And a lot of what you're writing should ideally be in Hindi, but I'm not very good at Hindi. So for example, Boy Number 32 is about a boy who's an orphan child, one of the kids of the, he's one of the street smart kids from Bombay. And the language he speaks is Bambaiya. Yeah, kharcha pani dene ka kya? Now, how do you translate that into English? How do you keep the feel of that? It's very difficult. Even Boy Number 32, the title, his name is Battis. Right? Because he was boy number 32. He's entered in the registers. Now in Hindi, if you say battis, that also means teeth. Then you understand that this boy smiles. So it's a balancing act. When you're writing in English, when you come out of an extremely Indian ethos, and you're also trying to represent that ethos, language actually becomes a pretty tough call.
Very difficult to write for children. By the way, see, language is a costume we put on our expressions. Similarly, when we bring up children, we design costumes to suit their age. We don't use the same sari to a 3-year-old or 8-year-old daughter. So similarly, when you write for children, don't you use the language that is appropriate for that particular age?
Certainly, but there's also you're trying to do something more than that. So getting a kid to understand it is one thing. For example, all of me is actually set in Victorian England. So I had to get the language of Victorian England, but yet a child in India to be able to understand it. So what I did was I took all the slang of Victorian England and I used that. I peppered it, judging it carefully so that, it's understandable and yet you're getting a flavor of Victorian England. And I must tell you how difficult this is because, for example, boy number 32, all through it, the boy speaks Indian English. There's this touch of Bombaya to it. And I slaved over the voice, literally slaved. So you got it right. And went off to my editor. She passed it on to an associate editor who sent me back a manuscript in which she's corrected every single sentence to standard English. I was so angry. I was like, if Salman Rushdie had sent you Midnight's Children, you would have corrected it. But they just didn't get it. So then I fought a little battle and finally they understood the point and then we put it all back to what it was. But we come out of this habit of standard English taught to us by good convent schools by nuns and priests. But as Indians, we use our language very differently. We slip in the Hindi, we think across two languages, and representing that in language is what I really try to do. So that when you read it, this comes out of India despite it being written in English. I don't want to be the la-di-da English writer who writes literary English for readers abroad. I want to write for children in India. It's really important to me.
See, in India, when you write in English, you have to write in Indian English. I'm depending upon, particularly for children. And Indian English also is written in different Indian English.
Exactly.
The Assamese English is different, Bengali English is different, Goan English probably is different. So Indian English has also different colors to it. So how do you balance? I'm just asking whether you have that in mind, because when you have children,
Very
you say
much.
Bombaya is people living in Mumbai. But what about people from Kolkata or people living in Goa or elsewhere? In Karnataka now, if you go to Tamil Nadu, you will hear a different kind of Indian English. It's very difficult
But it depends
to
on what
understand
the
also.
character's speaking, really. So you write for the character.
Yeah.
You assume the voice of the character. And that really, the final pass, I'm a 3-draft writer. So I do 3 drafts. But there's always a special pass, which is language pass. What are they speaking? Does it sound correct? To your ear, to an Indian's ear, does that sound correct? So a lot of hard work goes into actually crafting the voice.
Yeah, but then, okay, I'll come to Sampada. Let's hear Vinita again. Sampada, this is your book of travelogues. Chare Paula Ashint. It's a thin book, but her own experiences as she traveled across India. In Asia,
More of Asia.
yeah, parts of Asia. So, what do you find? What different you find in those countries, particularly as you write?
Yes.
Because this is for Indian or rather Goan readers or rather Konkani readers. Why did you feel like writing this? Because you have a lot of literature you find about travels and places.
I think since I'm a philosophical writer and philosophy and travel goes together. Everyone who loves philosophy loves to travel, and I love to read a lot of travelogues. So the moment, this was the first, my international travel was to Thailand, and as soon as I came back, I wrote a travelogue. And my last trip was in 2019 in Vietnam. So I have also changed over the years as a writer, and the first trip was more like shopping and see the lights, Bangkok, it's first international trip. But as you grow up and you understand that there are some people who don't like to travel, but they like to read travelogues. So I think just because I love to read travelogues, I have written about these 4 countries in my perspective, in my point of view, that how I felt as a woman traveling in these 4 countries. And I always try to find out what is not shown on the Instagram or what normally we don't know about the countries. So it was a very nice experience writing a travelogue. It also took me back. It was very nostalgic.
It's really unfortunate that most of the members of this audience, I think, ignorant about Konkani literature and
That's why I had
also
prepared actually in Konkani.
Yeah, खरं मैं कोंकणीन उलोवपाचें आशिल्लें हांगा पण कोंकणीन उलयल्यार कितले जाणांचे तकले वेल्यान वतलें म्हणून आमी इंग्लिशीनच हांव प्रिफर केलें
Prefer केलें.
पण जाल्यार पासून तुका आनी कितें सांगपा आसल्यार तूं मुद्दम सांग तुजें बरोवपा बद्दल बाय द वे संपदा's mother is here, Jyoti Konkalkar. She's a well-known, she's very well-known writer in Konkani. She, I would say, she is one of my favorite short story writer, but she has also written novels. And best part is, she has been translating the classics from other languages into Konkani. And that is very important for the development of any language. So,
As she also spoke about this language thing, I'm doing a project of translating Arundhati Roy's book into Konkani. And I have not only discovered English words, I have discovered some Konkani words also, because her language is some other level, her vocabulary, and getting the sense into a regional language, I mean, it's really tough job. I thought, because it's a non-fiction book and I am very interested in non-fiction, so I could do it just like this. But I can't do more than one paragraph a day, because it's a different perspective. If I wouldn't have done that translation, I would have been very more elated about the awards. But the way she wrote about the Booker Award, she said there are many people who are fighting a different battle altogether. You know, these things are important, of course, but there are certain things in life which needs more attention, which it doesn't get. For example, and she a particular kind of a line that yes, like we talk about progress and we talk about progress at what cost. And there are certain words which are not even existed in Konkani, like uranium. You can't translate in Konkani. So I think after reading that, you get a different perspective towards life, and you learn more about life. So I think that I could relate with that words, and certain things cannot be translated in other language. You have to get a sense and then just express.
I think for me also, as writing in English, you're using the language of your colonizers. So there's that self-awareness as well. You know, you have to work with that as well.
Now, Vinita got the award for this book, Dead as a Dodo. So this is the book that has been awarded by Sahitya Akademi. But most of the writers, you know, sometimes, many times I have heard them saying, and she is not different. This was published in 2015, and her latest probably thereafter. This book also for children, right? Yeah. No, this is also for children. So she feels that, wow, this was much better than that. How is that book has been awarded? So anyway, that is the right. What do you think about this? You know, sometimes you have better books.
This when I go to schools to do sessions with kids, which is your favorite book? So then I ask the kids, I mean, any of you have brothers and sisters? They say, yeah. I said, when you ask Mama, who do you love more? Does Mama say? They said, no. I said, then same thing for us. All our books are our kids. They're all our favorites. How can we choose?
That's right. I think every writer also has that dilemma when you are asked, which is your favorite story? How can I tell you? All the stories are favorite. That is why they are written by me. Anyway, yeah. Now, what are your plans for future? I'm now that you got the award. It is not the end. As I said, it is the beginning. So now, as you keep writing, these are the travelogues. Okay. But then there are probably other forms that you would like to work on. Maybe a novel, maybe philosophical writings. Because Ravindra Kaikar he has written profusely in this genre. We call it a thinker-writer, essayist.
Yeah, essayist.
Would you like to grow as essayist?
Yeah, I think that's what naturally comes to me. So next project is I've done an essence on Bhagavad Gita in Konkani. Yes, and I plan to there's a lot of philosophy in the Sanskrit language. I think we need to open the doors for all the languages. If Mahabharata and Ramayana was in Sanskrit, it wouldn't have been that popular. Just because it was translated in every language and passed on in a person's mother tongue, it has gained so much of popularity. So the idea is to translate as much as I could in Konkani, the Indian philosophy. And right now, as I said, I'm doing translation of Arundhati Roy's book. I have translated one more national classic, that is Karmata Siddhant, originally in Gujarati. I used the bridge language Marathi to translate it into Konkani. And I continue to write. I think I can't, I don't think so I'll be able to, even spend a day without writing. If not something creative, I write diary, but I don't think so, it's not just because I have won the award. Writing is something that I just liberates me. So it is more than just a profession, it's more than a profession now.
She brought up a point about writing diaries. Now I recollect one thing. When earlier, it's maybe 6-7 years back, when earlier we met the group of writers. Last meeting, I think, was at Wendel's place. I'm not sure. I think it was at Wendel's, where she was very vehement about, the exercise of writing. Every writer should write at least 800 words per day. She insisted. She was very vehement about it. And it was taken up very seriously by Wendell Rodrigues. And do you know, the next day he started writing. And within 1 year he came out with a book and he gave the credit or tribute to her. So
The story was Wendell wanted to write a book. So I said, start writing. The only way to write a book is to write, correct? And this happens to me all the time. People come up to me and say, oh, I'm thinking of writing. I want to be a writer. And I say, okay, so what have you written? And they've written nothing. They're thinking about it. So I was like, Wendell, just write. And it's a simple calculation. You do 800 words a day. And in about 3 months, you will have your first draft. And after that, you just work on it. You'll have a book in a year. He really took it seriously. He did his 800 words. And in 3 months, he had his first draft. And he called me to thank me. So yeah, it works.
it was really great. And that is why I think I remember Benita more than Wendell's writing, because she was the inspiration behind it. So, as you said, yes, for a writer, if not anything else, you should keep a diary. Do you maintain a diary?
Okay, so I don't really maintain a diary. My books are my diary. Whatever I'm going through or whatever's happening in the world somehow percolates through me and finds its way into what I write. And we've been seeing such troubled times lately. We've been seeing troubled times in our country. We've been seeing so much hatred. We've been seeing migrants abandoned to walk home. And all of this has been in my head. And I started writing a series of short stories that focus on all this, because my writing is really my diary. But the other thing that I do is that I do write every single day, because I've become a little bit paranoid. You see, you must never let the tap be turned off. Even if I write 2 lines, I will write 2 lines, because I've found that if I spend any day, if I write nothing to get kick-started, then it takes me a week or 10 days. So even if it's a line, I will write. I will keep the tap turned on. So that's a bit of advice for anyone here who wants to write. Write 800 words a day and keep the tap turned on.
Well, I remember, M.T. Vasudevan Nair, who is a famous Malayalam writer, very famous novel, Jnanpith awardee. You once told me, if you want to write a good story, you should write a good story. How to write a good story? Just write a good story. So whenever young writers come to me to ask, how do I write a good story? I say, you write a good story and you get a good story. So she made it so easy. If you want to write, you write it, you get it.
When Hemingway said this, Ernest Hemingway said, writing is a matter of getting your butt on the chair. I believe him.
That's true. And sometimes some writers are so much used to particular way of writing. I think it was Orhan Pamuk, I'm not sure. He would get up in the morning, dress up, have his breakfast, and open the door, go out, as if he's going to office for work, and take a long walk, come back, or maybe he was driving and coming back, park the car, enter his own flat, and go to the table and start writing, as if he's doing the official work. So some writers adopt these methods.
Everyone has their process.
I don't know.
Everyone has their process, you know, and Aran Kwamo could actually do that because while he's walking, he's thinking. And he'd come in at a run, go to his typewriter and start working, and you were not allowed to interrupt him because that whole process was now coming to fruition at the typing stage. So we all have our processes, but when you're a single mom and you're earning and you're running a house, you learn very fast to write in the cracks because there's always something else that you're doing. So I became very good at writing in the cracks for many, many years, and now it's lovely. Now I have large chunks of time, mainly because my daughter's grown up, and you know, you just get more time as you grow up. So yeah, I'm getting lots of chunks of time to write. It's been quite amazing, and my process has changed. The way I write has changed, and I must say, coming to Goa changed the way I write a lot. In Mumbai, your life was so full. You were pulled in so many directions. You were always running flat out, and you were writing when you could. But when I came to Goa, I slowed down. And I found that slowing down also slowed down my thinking process. I grew deeper roots. My creativity grew deeper roots. I learned for the first time that writing for me is so connected with the moon. I mean, now even my family knows that. I mean, the 2 days before the full moon, nobody will disturb me because I suddenly start writing. In fact, I'll start writing, I'll say, oh, is there a full moon? And I'll look up and there it will be. So you learn these things because you finally slowed down enough. You've lowered your roots into the ground. You've thought slowly enough and you allowed your creativity to grow. It's not toxic, under pressure, deadline creativity. This is creativity that's had time to breathe, that has had fertile ground. So Goa was a blessing. It just changed the way I wrote completely. I wouldn't be the writer that I am today if I hadn't shifted. I'm absolutely sure of that.
I remember Amitav Ghosh once said, Goa is different. He loves to be in Goa to write. So do I. And just I'm sharing with you, earlier I would write my stories during the night because I was not interrupted by anybody. My wife would put the children to sleep. She also would go to bed. And then the time was mine. And I would start writing the story, say around 10:20, 10:30 until 2:33. I would finish one story and go to bed and never look at the story again until it was sent for publication.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That was my habit, of course. Because I don't say others should emulate it. You have to go through it again. But then that's the way was mine. But now, as you said, the process has changed over the time. Now I'm retired from the shopkeeping. So I am a shopkeeper, by the way. Shopkeeper means in a village, I have a shop where I sold everything from 9 in the morning to 1 o'clock in the afternoon, then siesta like Goenka, Sushagat Goenkar, then 4 to 8, 8 to 8:30. By 9 I was at home, and then I would relax. So that was my way. Now, after I voluntarily retired some 8 years back, and then I have all the time at my disposal. Shaila is there to take care of the rest of the things, and I get enough time. So process is change. So earlier, if any story, when I start, and if there is a break, I wouldn't complete because I somehow couldn't. Even now, probably it stands the same. But then now I write over 1 day or 2 days or 3 days, so it's no problem. Now, just another question to you, because you have been having your forays in different areas like television and film. Yes. So I'll just, before you express yourself, I got some opportunities to write for films, got some awards also. But then I never enjoyed it. I thought it's not my cup of tea. You know, writing for a film as the director wants it or as somebody wants it, so it was not my cup of tea. I did it because in Konkani we need good films, so people approach me and I wrote. But then I was never happy with it. For you, you are a writer, you are also into direction, into script writing. What is your experience and why do you do it?
Okay, so writing for film and television and web series will drive you mad. And therefore you have to write books on the side to stay sane. Mainly because writing books is there's only you. You're the one who's writing. You know, it's nobody else actually has any say in the matter. Whereas when you write for films and television, the first thing you have to accept is it's an extremely collaborative process. You are the writer, but a lot of people have a say and a stake in the process. This also makes it so expensive. At the end of the day, a film is going to cost crores and crores to be made. A web series is going to cost crores and crores and crores. So people want a say. So you have to firstly accept that. The writing of a film, besides being collaborative, it's a completely different mind. You have to have a different mind. I'm very lucky that I'm able to switch between the two minds. But but even when I do that, I do have a detox process. So if I've been writing a lot of web series, you won't find me writing a book parallelly because the thought process is so different. I'll finish writing a web series. I'll take a week, 10 days off, take a deep breath, read some good books, and then start writing books. And the same way, when I'm writing a book, I can't jumpstart into writing a web series because when you write for film or television, these are firstly very visual media. You have to think with your eye. You see, here you think with your head. It's very different. While storytelling is the base of the two, the way that story is expressed, one is expressed in images and one is expressed in language. It's completely different. So yes, I do both, and I must tell you that as I get older and crankier, I have less patience to do the film and the television and all of it. I've just finished writing a web series for Yash Raj Films, and it drove me crazy. They bought a book of mine which has not yet been published, which is a detective story, and they hired me to also write the web series, and by the time I finished the web series, it was a lovely soap. It was no longer a detective series. So then I said, I quit, and I left. So, well, yeah, you have to roll with the punches because it's been bought by someone, they're investing money, they're going to put it on screen. They get final say. In a book, nobody gets final say except you, not even your editor, quite honestly. You know, so that's why I write books, to stay sane.
Vinita, when you write books, particularly, it's a long process. You send a book to the publisher, then the copy editor goes through it. And do you get suggestions which you don't like from the editor, copy editors?
I've been very lucky with my editors. Also, before my book gets to an editor, it's been through 3 drafts. That's a lot of work, you know. And the reason also, on my own, I do 3 full drafts before it goes out. And that's the reason I do those 3 full drafts is that it is a very polished product going out, so there's less chance of it being interfered with or messed with. And quite honestly, it all depends on the editor. I've had marvelous editors who've seen what I was trying to do, so then it becomes a conversation. I've also have editors who try to tell me this is the way it will be. And here's the wonderful thing, because I don't write books to run my house. I do dirty television to run my kitchen. So then I say, okay, then don't publish it. I'll go to someone else. I have the luxury of saying that. At the same time, when I'm writing dirty television, I know that I don't have the luxury of saying that because I'm doing that to earn my bread. So when they tell me, make that change, you kind of fight a bit, then you say, all right, and you make the change. So this is the price you pay. So no, I've really been lucky with my editors, I must say. What I'd like to do is actually introduce the book, Dead as the Dodo, to, okay. So I just want to, Dead as the Dodo is the book that's one, but it's part of a trilogy. So there's Tiger by the Tail, there's Dead as the Dodo, and there's Monkey See, Monkey Do. And these 3 books, actually, all my books come out of something that's happening in my life. And these came out of having dogs. Having dogs and cats and a pet rats and a pet bat. So our household always has animals. Squirrels always has animals in it. We're always rescuing or fostering or mentoring. And when I looked around me, I just saw that the way we treat animals is appalling. In India, it's awful. We starve them, we beat them, we stick them in cages, and we cut their heads off and eat them. So I got really upset about this. And I got my first dog, who I adored. And the day I got my dog, I stopped eating non-veg because I decided that you can't love one animal and eat another. So all of this was in my head. And one day the thought came to me that what if animals fought back? What if all that we did to animals, they turned around and they fought back? And so this set of books, while underneath it, the idea of the books really is to explain to kids what animal rights are, what sentient beings are, what the issues are with, for example, with tigers, why are they disappearing? What happened with extinction? You know, why are we actually in the middle of the largest extinction the world has ever known? I mean, the dodo is nothing compared to what we're doing right now. We lose 53 species every single day. I don't know whether you know that. It's caused entirely by man. So this was the idea. But as usual, I don't believe in preaching. So I said, let's make it a rip-roaring story. So it's based around the Animal Intelligence Agency. And there's a young boy called Rana, and he's Agent 11.5 because he's 11 and a half years old. And he works with Agent 002, who is Baga Royal Bengal Tiger. And there's Agent number, he has no name. He's a monkey, and his name was taken away for bad behavior. And together in every book, they go on a mission. So it's like Animal James Bond. In this one, they go on a mission to find out why are the tigers disappearing from all the sanctuaries in India, which indeed they are. Where they're going, and the answer they finally find, it takes them all the way to China, but tigers are disappearing into Chinese medicine, and that's really where they're going. A dead tiger is worth 46 lakhs, which is a lot of incentive to kill them. In this one, they discover the last living dodo, and they have to save him because everybody wants the last living dodo, and the one who wants him the most is a millionaire who actually wants him for lunch. He wants to eat. He wants the most expensive meal ever, and that would be the last living dodo. And Monkey See, Monkey Do is about the testing that we do, product testing on animals. It still continues. It's absolutely barbaric. You know, to have shiny hair, our shampoo is tested on rabbits whose eyelids are cut off so that the eyes stay permanently open, and the shampoo is dripped into their eyes until they go blind. All our cosmetics are tested on dogs whose vocal cords are cut so that they can't scream in agony while they're being tested upon. The kind of suffering and pain that goes into beauty and other products, it's horrifying. And I wanted kids to see that. I didn't want to horrify them, but they certainly needed to know. So Monkey See, Monkey Do is about that. So that's where this lot of books have come from, and I'm so glad that they've been recognized. I hope it'll get more kids to read them, and I hope more kids will understand that an animal is also another sentient being and deserves better.
Has the Indian mythology or influenced you, or has any stories from our mythology have entered you in your writings?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up like a good convent-educated girl reading English books. And I didn't, again, because I have a Catholic background, I didn't really engage with the Mahabharata till I was in college. And then I one day just picked up Raja Gopalachari's version and I read it and I was astounded. I was like, oh, what a book! It was amazing. And that set me off on a whole journey of discovery, and I read widely. And I love Indian mythology, but I wanted to wait until I could bring something to it that was beyond the normal. Everybody's doing, you know, secrets of the Nagas, secrets of the this, secrets of the that. I don't think mythology is entertainment. You can certainly entertain, but it's much deeper than that. And I want to do something a little bit beyond that. So right at the moment, I'm doing a version of the Vikram Vetal saga. And it takes a look at urban mythology. Vikram is actually a police officer based in Delhi. Vetal is his Siamese twin who's been separated from him, and now is a twisted little thing that he carries around in his backpack on his back. And what they encounter are all the legends that are last of still alive in Delhi. For example, and this is based on the real legends of Delhi. For example, if you go to Firoz Shah Kotla any day, you'll find all these letters left all over Firoz Shah Kotla. And they're all letters addressed to the jinns. So when you have a problem at home, you address the jinn, you ask for help. And the thing that interested me was this habit is very new. It started in the time of Indira Gandhi, when Sanjay Gandhi decided he was going to clear the slums to make Delhi a beautiful city. And they started bulldozing slums. And these slum dwellers had nowhere to go. They could not go to the government, they could not go to any authority. In their desperation, they started writing letters to the jinns, which is where this tradition started from. So I found that fascinating. So my stories are based on stories like that. So it's about jinns, but it's also about urban displacement. It's also about snatching things away from the poor just because you can. It means one person's beauty means another person being on the roads in winter with children. So I'm working with that at the moment. So churels, jinns, nagins are all being reinvented as the last of their kind. And with each of them, we look at an aspect of modern India. You look at migrants and why they should be so discarded, nobody cares. You know, you look at hatred and how it's being forcibly injected into our veins. So I've taken my very real, very contemporary angst and used Indian mythology to tell it.
I'm very happy that you have taken up this, and I'm sure the children will enjoy it. Your take on our mythology, our incense, our all. These days, children look at Shiva's trilogy as if it is all authentic. And I feel so sorry my own grandchildren come to me with different questions which I cannot answer them. Because they take it as if these are our roots, they think. Anyway.
And it's not just the books, it's the television series where you are taking history and giving it a complete twist. You know, it's and kids are watching that and believing it's true. It's so wrong to take stories and use them for political agendas. And I have a problem with that, and I'm going to stand up against it. I just decided somebody has to.
Yeah, correct. And when these writers get millions of dollars from the publishers, they send a wrong message to people.
I completely agree, but I must tell you that the same writers who got millions of dollars are no longer getting millions of dollars.
I know, now they are already in the oblivion.
The market has crashed.
That's true. Yeah, yeah. But one thing, I know good writers will not they will not write for awards, nor for money. I don't think if you are
If you write for an award, you'll never win it because you come in writing out of such an inauthentic place. Nothing can come of it.
Yeah. Sampada, what is your take on this? Because what do you expect from your writings? I don't know, when you write in Konkani, unfortunately, we have a very limited readership. As it is, Goa is a very small territory. Then Konkani speakers are spread all over the country. And like my own Venita, who is ignorant about Konkani literature, you know nothing about Konkani literature. So are many in the audience. In this situation, what do you think is the future of Konkani literature? About also English literature, Indian English literature, whether you are able to reach to the right audience, you know, the Indian audience. I'm just asking you, subsequently, will you talk? Yeah.
I think it is very important to read and talk in your mother tongue. It's very important to have a very balanced and very good mental state. What happens, I would like to mention the founder of Esperanto language. One day he realized that he's praying in Hebrew language, which nobody speaks, nobody spoke at that time. And he was fluent in all the European languages, but Europeans never considered him as one. So he realized his life has been, kind of all broken. He's speaking one language at home, he's praying in one language, he's speaking one language, he's studied in one language. So I think it's moral responsibility as a person to pass on your mother tongue to your children. And you have to learn at least a primary education in your mother tongue. I think that was the actual proposal what Gandhiji gave, that we have to have an Indian language as bridge language to connect, and then every state has its own official language. So that's how you get to know about your culture. One language is just not a language. It's about culture. It's about heritage. So once a language dies, the culture, heritage, everything dies with it. So as far as Konkani is concerned, many people ask me, why don't you write in English? There's a lot of readership. It's like you have to enrich your own language. And when it comes to philosophy, you cannot understand philosophy better than your mother tongue. I was reading Swami Vivekananda's books in Marathi. It took me a little longer to understand, probably because the language was very high, or Swami Vivekananda's philosophy is very high. But the moment I got a Konkani translation, it was very easy. So I got interested in philosophy because my grandmother told the stories of Mahabharata and Ramayana in Konkani language. So I think at least philosophy has to be written in your language. I think Konkani language has a great future because now kids are learning, they are doing their PhDs, up to PhDs in Konkani. So I think it's not about readership, it's about a quality work that you're doing for your language. And many people read. Many people say that nobody reads newspapers or books nowadays. It's a very wrong thing. People read in different languages now. They've understood that you have to know more than 2 languages, you get an edge. As Gandhiji always said, you have to learn at least 2-3 languages so that you get to learn a lot of literature, and that always adds to your mental health.
Okay, so I write in English. I'm well aware that it's a colonial language. I'm well aware that it's a language of privilege. I'm well aware that it is a language that's seen in India as a key to opening doors to better lifestyle, to a better job, to all of these things. Um, what I do think I do, which is important, is that, you know, all our kids are reading, when they read in English, they are reading Harry Potter and they're reading, you know, they're reading Western literature all the time. And to my mind, that if you read literature all the time in which you have no place, in which you can never be a hero, what are you learning? I think it's very important for you to read books which come from your background, which tell you that you too are important, that you too can step into the role of a hero or heroine, and you too can do all of this. And so I try to do that. I try to provide for Indian children a space in which they can see themselves as truly heroes. Because we are so overwhelmed with Western propaganda and Western media, and you know, kids grow up wanting to have blonde hair because that's what they're reading all the time. So this creates a space where kids can belong. That's part of it. Because I'm so aware that I do write for privileged English readers, you know, in India, if you're having an education in English, you're already very privileged. So what I have done is that I have offered my publishers Hindi rights for free. I don't want anything as long as they're translated and done in Hindi and printed, I'm happy. I want nothing from it. I would love my books to go out to a larger readership. I would love children of many more, you know, many more different starters to be able to read my books. So that's what I've done from my side. Unfortunately, publishing has taken such a huge hit with COVID that I don't know when that will happen, but one day my books will be in Hindi and I will be very, very happy. Maybe other languages as well.
Maybe in Konkani also.
I would be
Maybe
so happy. I mean,
it's a challenge to young
Sampada
writers.
translates, yes.
Yeah. And she is so generous. She doesn't want to expect, and she doesn't expect anything in return. So we can always take up the challenge. Yes, one thing I agree with you. One thing is, among the Indian languages, the regional languages, unfortunately, English was not considered as a regional language. We would, at Sahitya Academy also, we call it Indian English. And Indian English is as Indian as a Konkani or Marathi.
Absolutely.
Okay, and a good change that has happened. Amitav Ghosh was the first writer to get award in English, Gyanpith Award. Gyanpith never considered English as Indian English literature. Anyway, it's a good change, and I'm very happy. I must share with you also. You know, Carmelin, for example, I wrote in Konkani. 1,100 copies were printed. First print took about 20 years, and second edition has not been out yet. So students who want to read it, they don't get it in Konkani. They have to go to English or Marathi or Hindi or something. But in English, when it was printed, it is already in the 5th or 6th edition, 6th print, I would say. And well, this is the situation. This is the fact. So we have to accept it. And as she rightly said, yes, we cannot forgo our mother tongue. Not because we have attachment to it, but with the language, the culture comes. When that lady speaking, what language I forgot, in Andaman, when she died, with her,
Yes,
the
last
culture
living
died,
language,
the
yes.
last speaker. So we have to be very careful about this. So I don't go overboard to speak about Konkani. But at the same time, I feel Goa has identity because it has our own language. And we do need writers like Vanita. We will be national right now. I can still say she is internationally known. And when her writings enter Konkani in translation, well, she will be a Konkani writer. So if I am known as Damodar Mahasaya as a writer, say, in some other quarters other than Goa, than just because they read me in English. So similarly, anyway, I'm very happy for having this discussion. Because there are many things the writer want to express. Probably my questions are not enough. Please let Sampada speak out her mind in totality.
I just liked one point. She said, I don't like anybody interfering with my draft. It happened since because of the COVID. Now, National Academy of Letters, Sahitya Akademi is doing a lot of virtual programs. So, one writer, so I had no idea that he was Dean of Kashmir University, Dr. Zaman Azurda. He sent me an invitation, and I just know him as a Kashmiri writer. And I replied him, said, oh my God, I didn't know you were Dean of Kashmir University. He said, it is not a great thing to be a Dean of Kashmir University. I am a writer first. A writer has no protocol. He's free. And all the other jobs comes with protocol. So I think I liked about her about that she said, you are not supposed to interfere with my luxury, or you have that luxury of saying, don't publish my work if you want to interfere. I think that one principle every writer has to protect and kind of nurture, that I will not write for a book to get published. I will write it because I want to express myself for the betterment of society. Yeah, I think that's it.
Sure. Yes, Dilita, please.
Okay. So I write across many genres, so that gets very confusing, especially for the marketing guys when they want to market my books, because I do books for kids, I also do books for adults, and then I write film and television on the side. I'd just like to introduce this book, because this is book I love. It is set in Goa. It's set in Portuguese Goa. It's a murder mystery set in Portuguese Goa. And I put a lot of heart and soul into this because I wanted to, be authentic to my Goa, where I've spent so many years. And one of my first reviews said, oh, this book could have been written anywhere. It didn't need to be written in Goa. I nearly had a meltdown. Because, it's authentic to I've put so much effort into this. Even the frogs that appear in the book are the correct frogs. You know which ones. The ones with a little red stripe on their backs, correct? Those ones. There's a description of a walk through a graveyard, and all that you smell is accurate for that time. The jackfruit and the kaju coming into flower. So I was so angry about it. But if you want to read a book that has a Goan soul, this is the one. Okay. Yeah. Sorry? Project right now. I must say it's been very difficult. Ever since the lockdown, it wasn't the lockdown so much because, the lockdown is every writer's fantasy that you're forced to sit at home and write, correct? But what happened subsequent to that was so disturbing. The migrant issues that we saw in Goa, the way they were treated across India, the kind of hysterical hatred that we've been seeing, all of this has been so difficult that I just shut down as a writer because I didn't know what to write. I was like, what stories do you tell that make any sense in a world like this, a world that's gone mad? What can you say that makes sense of any of this? So I really struggled for a very long time to figure out what to write. Because this is not the time to simply entertain people. That has its space, certainly. But I've always wanted to do a little bit more than that. So it took me a long time to get back to writing. I kept doing the commercial stuff because that's easy, that's on autopilot. You write the web series, so they tell you, we want this, you say, okay, take. So that I kept doing. But I have come back with a couple of books. And what really I have enjoyed is coming back to writing short stories. And what I've been trying to do is in each story-wise, I tackle the issues that I find are really disturbing me, or I find are intellectually challenging at this moment, or I think that we need to confront. So I've been doing a series of short stories that take a look at all the issues around us, and that kind of seemed to make sense for me. So yeah, that's helped.
I'm very happy that you are going to take up short stories. What Nirmal Verma said was that your short story is born out of a desire to write a poem in the narrative style of a novel.
Ooh, lovely.
Yeah. So even I rate poetry very high, though I am not very good at it. But then, yes, for me, somehow, short story is my favorite. Not because
Mine
I
too.
write,
You know, I have such a soft spot for short stories, and I'm always told there's no market for short stories.
Yeah.
And I keep trying to prove them wrong, so let's see.
It is unfortunate that short story is taking a back bench. But then recently when I was talking to Mini Krishnan, she said, no, short story is on the front bench now. It will go ahead. And she said, I'm going to promote it. Of course, in her own way, probably. Yeah. What is the next on your cards?
As I said, I'm translating a lot of Indian philosophy into Konkani. So I finished one book on Bhagavad Gita, that's Essence, but I couldn't put everything together. So I'm writing a different book which will kind of elaborate certain concepts about Gita in modern terms, like how it is scientific or how it's important in day-to-day life. Yeah, and I'm working on a couple of books on philosophy, like Friedrich Nietzsche. He had written a book, The Twilight of Idols, and the great Konkani writer Rabindranath Tagore was so inspired. He also wrote a couple of books in that genre. It's small paras where you can tell philosophical thought in one para that you could take like two pages or something. So I'm working on that book, and one English book, a thing called philosophy. So my viewpoint about philosophy. So he said, express your mind. I think a couple of months back, I met one person, a very respected person who is a well-wisher, and he said, I think you should write your age. You know, it looks, the philosophy is like, you know, it sounds like you read something and then you have copied, you know. This criticism he heard about someone that he was talking about me. So I didn't know. I went home and I was thinking, you know, what is my age? So a person doesn't get intellectual or interested in philosophy as he grows old. You know, if you are a thinker, you are thinker at a very young age. And people say, why are you writing Essence of Bhagavad Gita? Then you won't get married and you will become a hermit or something. No, it's not that way. I think this philosophy has to be learned at a very young age and you realize how to live your life. Like there is, I will just explain in one word. There is a book called Yaksha Prashna, which is part of Mahabharata, where the four brothers of Yudhishthir died, and one person came out. He said, if you answer my questions, I'm going to, you know, make them alive. So one question, he said, who cannot sleep at night? He said, the person who has a loan on his head. So these are very simple things about life, you know. The moment we learn it very young age, we realize that philosophy is not to be learned when you are 60 or 70, where you have much time left in your hand. I think it has to be learned at very young age, especially someone like Bhagavad Gita. And there's so many philosophical meaning hid behind this Mahabharata Ramayana. It's not just that two people fought or Ravan just kidnapped Sita. It's about do not take anything that doesn't belong to you. You know, there's certain philosophical things that give a lot of insight about life. Yeah, so I think people just, you know, and when I was writing, at a very young age, people say, okay, who wrote for your mother wrote? So one person said, a very nice article published in your name, but written by your mother. I really liked it very much. So I don't think so. A person cannot write for you, you know, not for 10 years. So I was a bit disturbed, but then he said, don't publish your work. Just write and keep. Publish when you get a little older, you know, because it's too philosophical. It doesn't look that you have written. So, yeah, I mean, it's coming from him, it's just like, I'm not really, I was thinking that I write very, you know, I think, is it really getting too, you know, childish? And I said, no, because these things, you know, people think that I have not written, it's not my age, but I don't think so. It's age for writer. You can write poetry at 80. You don't have to be like, you know, 16-year-old to write poetry. Same way, you don't have to be a very old person with gray hair to write philosophy, I think. You cannot judge. There's no age for writing.
I'm very happy, but let me tell you, Sampada has many fans. Recently, I met one, Gurunath Keyakar, who spoke so highly about her. But again, he was 90. So I hope the youngsters also become her fans, and she will draw inspiration from them too. Actually, we have another 30 minutes. 20 minutes at least. Okay, we have August audience here. I hope you all have yes. And
one quick question.
take your time.
No, it's for Sampada. I wanted to know more about your book. You said 4 countries you traveled in, but you spoke about Thailand and Vietnam. So, which other countries? How long were you there? What did you do?
Yeah.
And a second part is, are you thinking of translating into English? So we can also read. I'm sorry, I don't know Konkani, but I would love to read your travel book.
This is travelogue about 4 countries: Thailand, Sri Lanka, UAE, and Vietnam. I said 2 countries because first trip was Thailand, and my last trip was in 2019 Vietnam. But I don't know. I would be translating. Maybe some other writer may translate it in English. It's a every country. A lot of people say, okay, you're going to Sri Lanka. It's just like Chennai. No, even if you visit Chennai after 2 years, it's not the same. And you are not the same person who is going there. So every time you visit a country, it's different. You are a different person. Like I went to UAE twice. So everything was changed. I was changed as a person. So perspective changes. And the food, everything. The first time we went to Thailand, I was like, very young. And I was just like, you click photos and we do a lot of shopping, malls. So as you grow up, you realize there's a lot of more to a country than shopping. There's historical sites and there is, you observe people, how people live, how hard the life is or how different the life is. So it's nice. Like in Thailand, my mom asked the driver, "Are you happy with the, that's royalty, right? We come from democracy." No, we are happy. We have everything. So as a person who comes from India, where you have a, right to express, you can even say bad words to PM. You can say anything, unless and until you're not violating certain norms. You are a, member of a largest democracy in the world. So when you travel to different countries, you realize it more, in a better way. Similarly, so every country is different. Like Vietnam, it's a very poor country. They have lot of hard work. There was one girl in a massage parlor. They have this foot massages everywhere. So we kind of interviewed her. So what are you doing? She said, morning I go to college. 5 o'clock I go home. Then 6 o'clock I come here and I go home back to 2 o'clock. And I happen to only sleep for a few hours, because I want education as well as I want to support my family. So girls there or women, they work so hard. We have been so privileged that we are safe, especially in Goa, a lot of education. And I was brought up as an individual, no, even my grandmother, she would always say, girls are special. This gender bias and all that we learned when we were in school, you have to be a girl and you can't reject a guy, when you get a proposal and all that. So you realize it when you travel both the worlds, I haven't been to US, but people say it's very progress. So I want to travel and let's compare, where you stand, where other people stand. So it's a very enriching experience.
Thanks.
I thought she herself wants to ask. Any more questions, please? You like to do it? Anybody else? Yeah. Okay.
I have a question for Bhai.
Oh. You're not supposed to ask me. I am supposed. It's my privilege to ask you.
So Bhai, I have to tell you, I was so happy when Bhai agreed to be part of this because he's been a mentor to many, many writers in Goa. He's been welcoming, he's been open, he's been supportive. It's been marvelous. So Bhai, you've had a long writing career, haven't you? What's been the most satisfying part?
Well, once I finish a short story or a novel, then I am overwhelmed. I feel I have accomplished everything. And then until the next story comes. So I don't think, I don't like, when she called me, I'm happy that you are a chief guest. I am not a chief guest. I am here with them. I'm happy to be among them. So it's better to be, not to be, put you on the higher pedestal. I don't like it. And for your information, I don't like to be a mentor to anybody, but I am still learning from you. I learn from her, I learn from you, I learn from the people. So that is why probably writing keeps me going. So as I told you, 4 days back, 6 days back, I wrote I finished one story, and I am in the middle of second. In fact, I should have finished it today. But then what I mean to say is, I keep writing. And sometimes for 6 months or even 1 year, 2 years, I don't write a single story. But that's the way I write. But when I don't write, I keep reading.
Yes.
Once, probably you have heard of the great Gandhian Kaka Saheb Kalelkar. He was in Goa with Ravindra Kelekar ji. And I expressed to him, I said, I'm a shopkeeper, I have my own family, so I don't get enough time to read. Sorry, I don't get enough time to write. You know what he advised me? He said, don't worry if you don't have enough time to write, but you have to be worried if you don't get enough time to read. So don't stop reading. Writing will come some other day, probably. And it is true. I like that question. Yes, please.
Yeah, this is actually for both, all three of you. Where do you feel a kind of a writers' guild belongs in Goa? Does it make sense to have a kind of community of writers? Can you learn something from a community of writers? Or is it something that you just do best alone? What is the scene in Goa now, and what do you think?
I don't know about the scene in Goa, but I've at the moment been very heavily involved in an effort to set up a writers guild for kidlit writers who write for children, and my God, it's been a wrangle. You see, while your process as a writer might be very, you might like your solitude and write alone, but if you want rights, you have to get together and fight for them. And especially for us as writers of kidlit, you'll be invited to, most of the big literary festivals have no space for children's literature. Obviously it doesn't matter. Even something like Jaipur Lit Fest, we had to lobby them for several years before the writers' stage was moved into the main Jaipur Lit Festival. Otherwise, it was in another venue completely. You find situations where you've been invited to a lit fest and you're given different accommodation from the other mainstream writers because they're important and you're not. Yes, I won the Hindu award for I won it twice, but one of the books. So the winner of the main Hindu award prize got 3 lakhs, and I got a gift certificate for 3,000 rupees for Higginbothams to get books. This is the kind of discrimination that happens with children's writers, and really, I get really angry about it. So we've been rallying and trying to get together so that we can. The other thing is that we're always expected, you're a children's writer, you'll do it for free. So schools expect you to pay for your own cab fare, turn up at the school, run a 1-hour session with 100 kids, which is exhausting, and then leave. It just makes no sense. And we are being, this I find about the kidlit community, we all have big, open, generous hearts. Well, okay, we'll do it for the children. But somebody has to draw a line, so we're in the process of trying to draw that line and saying, enough, no more. And we started with, it's so sad, we're so bottom of the totem. Do you know what we started with? We started with no more free sessions. We will take 101 rupees as a token. That's where we started from. But it's a start, okay? So literally, we had to get everyone to agree at least 101 rupees they will take. So we'll move upwards from there. But I don't know about Konkani, but again, like Kidlit, it has to be pan-India, otherwise you don't have enough people. And you need to get everyone on the same page to have clout. Because there's so many writers that unless the big heavy-duty ones start putting their foot down, and this is really where the mentors and the writers with the clout and the bestsellers come in, unless they take a stand, none of the other stands have any meaning. Because if Sudha Murthy decides to do a free session, why will they bother to pay Vanita Koilo? She's right now the biggest seller, she's the best-selling children's author. So yeah, it's a long haul, but we've made a bit of a start.
Discrimination is like, it's always there, everywhere. Like, especially in Konkani, they think that, non-fiction is not very creative. But I beg to differ, it is very creative. Philosophy is also very creative because to write one thought, you need to take in the 100 thoughts and you need to think about it and then come out with your original one. So I think, like novelists or the short story writers normally get there is a discrimination. People think it's not creative, that's it. And it's not considered, I don't know. But there is a discrimination sometimes. Normally it's like since because I've been writing into philosophy, I don't know what happens otherwise. There are different. There are poets and then short story writers and then there are novelists. So maybe I don't know. Maybe Bhai can answer it well.
Not answer well, but then I'll tell you, share my experience here. Yes, there is discrimination. Now, for example, when I write a book and it gets translated, the translated book sells well because it is well translated, but translator doesn't get a mention. So this is very, very, it gets nominal mention because tomorrow if you read Carmelin in English or Bangla, you will say it will by Damodar Mauzo. You will never go to see who has translated into, isn't it? So in fact, translators should get due respect and equal respect. Also, sometimes, those who like novels, they say short story is an inferior genre, or this attitude is there. But I think the writer should forget it. And I'll also tell you about the guild you said. We have writers groups here, different. Konkani has its own writers community. They meet on different levels. Now, for example, there is a Vachani Vishwa, where students or younger generation writers, they are invited to talk about the best book that the speaker has read. So it's a good initiative. Similarly, we have Goa Writers Group, where we discuss within the group. But I am not quite happy with that. Then there are efforts of holding workshops. I remember Victor Rangel Ribeiro was in Goa. When he was in Goa, we held one workshop in collaboration with Naveen Times. I don't know whether you were there. I don't think, but then, you probably heard of it. And I was invited by Victor. He said, please join me. I went there and I found at least about 30, 40 participants were there. And then the workshop went on well, but then everybody was not interested in knowing how to write. They were interested in knowing how to get published. So it is immaterial, but you write first for yourself. You should be content with your writing, then you look out for publisher. Publisher will suit after you. But this is not happening here. Again, if there are any more questions, please. Yes, please. Yeah.
What is the difference? How did you feel when you were writing films and writing books? What are the differences?
Huge difference, I tell you. Writing books, mainly they leave you alone to do your own thing. Writing films, you have a lot of people that you have to work with, and you have to structure it very differently. When you watch a movie, you want it to be exciting, you want it to have a climax. The whole story has to go boom, 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 boof. Then you're happy. So it's about structure. You have to build a story that slowly rises to a climax, ends satisfactorily. So when you write films, it's a lot about the structure, but books are not like that. Books, I can just take a character and take a walk inside his head, and that can be a story. You can just follow a character through a day. There's several famous books that are just inside a character's head for the day. So writing for books is tremendous freedom. It's also the freedom to actually be inside your character's head. In film, when I did that, I'd have to do a flashback, I'd have to do a voiceover. So books are very freeing. Books, you can write a story that goes anywhere that your imagination wants to take you. I can go to the moon, I can go to Mars, I can go zip into 2,000 years from now. Whereas in the film, they'll first ask me, what's the budget? Then we'll think about doing all of this. So that's really, really a big difference.
Any more? Shall I wind up? Okay. We are here to celebrate the awards won by Sampada and Vanita. And that is just an excuse to meet and speak to the audience, to the lovers of literature or lovers of Vanita or Sampada. awards, nobody writes for awards. There are people, of course, there are people who are very much conscious what is coming, where the awards are. Supposing some New York Times has announced one award, then somebody starts struggling to write a short story to send to the editors. But then, in fact, writers like Vanita or Sampada, they will write not for awards. I'm 100% sure about it. As she said, when she gets paid, she will write for advertising companies or she will write scripts for the TV series, which will not give her the same satisfaction as writing a novel or short story or children's literature. Well, why the awards are important? Yes, awards, when they come to you, they are very special. It changes the perception of people like you, readers, who have read her or who have not read her. So that is why the awards do matter. But then, if anybody in the audience is a writer or aspiring to become a writer, then my advice is don't look at the prospects. Do write. If you love life, you will be, I'm 100% sure, you can be a good artist, you can be a good writer, you can be a good performer. But you love life first. That is the most important crux of this being. Second thing, I would say, now we have Subodh here, who is an artist. We all know him as an artist. We have forgotten that he was a doctor. He is a doctor, rather, because he has not returned his degree. But then he could have been a prosperous doctor, but he chose to be an artist. Why? Not looking at the prospects. If you look at the prospects and pursue the professions, then probably it will be something. Can I tell a short story, small story? Okay. कोंकणीन सांगपाक मेळ्ळें आनी बरिस्ता आशिल्लें, पूण probably let me express to you in whatever language that I know, English. So it's about two donkeys. There was a circus that had come to, say, Margao, and it was performing in the city. And after late in the night, after 11 o'clock, when the show was over, one of the donkeys who was performing in the circus, he strayed and went looking out in the city. And when he came near the municipality, Margao, just imagine, Margao municipality, she found another creature grazing there in the gutters. So he went closer. He found, looks like a donkey. Then he asked, "Who are you?" He said, "I am a donkey." And that donkey was surprised at looking at him. And he said, "Who are you? Such healthy and stout." And he said, "I am also a donkey. How come you are so lean?" Then he said, and then they both started conversing and discussing. This, the lean donkey was with a washerman and his donkey. Washerman would load the clothes on his back, take him to the river where the clothes were washed, and that heavy load again put on him and brought him back. And he was feeding him very poorly and was allowed to go and graze anywhere. Whereas the circus donkey said, "Wow, so bad situation. I am at the circus. Only about 5 to 10 minutes I have to perform 2 or 3 times. And then I get all the good food, meat and vegetables and whatever I want." The owner, the circus owner is very generous. He feeds us very well. Then I said, "You are really lucky. You have a circus owner to feed you. And my washerman is very, very stingy." Then said, "Why don't you come and join the circus? I'll take you with me. You have to learn some tricks. Within few days you will be trained and you can be with circus." He said, "Okay." He thought of it. And then he said, "What are the prospects there?" So the circus donkey said, "Prospects? You are working for that washerman where you are poorly fed, You look so weak. And what prospects you look there? You will get good food. I said, no. Then he said, okay, no, I think I better not go. Then he said, what prospects you have? I said, I'll tell you. These days, I take the clothes, and the washerman's daughter comes with the clothes and washes. And whenever she washes, the clothes get torn. Some clothes get torn. And the washerman, yesterday, he has warned her, next time if you tear the clothes again, I'll marry you with this donkey. So, please, if you aspire to become writers, don't look for prospects.